Okay, so you mentioned that you got coaching for publishing.
Hmm.
That's something that I feel is quite mysterious to me. So it might be mysterious to people watching or listening.
Sure.
Can you elaborate on that process a bit more?
Yeah. So the process of going through the publishing process today is like dumb easy.
Yeah, that's good.
If you can, you're uploading documents to a site, you're giving it a title, you're giving it a name, you're letting them know who the author is, and if you meet their specifications for how their book should be laid out, and which you can pay someone else to do, and the book cover is the right dimensions, like you're rocking and rolling, right? The only thing you have to decide is what to price it at, and you can publish it. But as far as like strategy and marketing strategies and things of that sort go, to where you are building a larger audience
Hmm.
and then building things like email lists and then building things like Facebook groups and then things of this sort. Like, how do I take advantage of all these different things to really build an author platform and not just another book?
Right.
And so that's what I'm paying coaching for, is someone who's been in my shoes, got to the next level, and now I want to get to the next level. And so I'm paying them to show me, like, and to walk me through those steps. And technically, I could figure this all out on my own, just as anyone could. But it helps to have someone who's made a lot of mistakes, who actually know how to avoid some pitfalls. And then even when you do fall in pitfalls, which you will, how to get out of them really quickly so you can keep moving forward. Because I think it's the lack of progress that a lot of people see that stop them and stump them.
Yeah, definitely. That's really great that like I feel like that's something I've always wanted to try to do is get like a mentor or coach for what I'm doing as well. Just the YouTube stuff and trying to essentially create my own business in the future.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah, I think that would be very helpful. I probably need to consider that, doing that soon.
Yeah, and it's scary. It's terrifying to get to that point that you're paying someone money that you had to work for, and then hoping there's a return on your investment on the other end.
Yeah,
Especially if you don't really know the person too well, but you know enough that they have at least a success backing them up.
so this coach is coaching you more so for almost like building a community and
Mm. That's
building,
part of it. Yeah.
yeah, building a group that
Oh, like an
um,
author platform. Yeah.
author platform. Yeah. So it's more so for that versus like teaching you how to actually publish a book because you already know how to do that.
Yeah. That stuff's easy. It's more of like, how do we scale this
Gotcha.
to how do
Okay.
I take, and we're actually working on a piece together where it's funny because I've been able to help him a little bit too. And this is so it's actually been working out beneficially for both of us. That how do I take one book and how do I turn that into a ton of different products, right? So like right now you can take one book and you can turn that into an audiobook, an ebook, a paperback, and a hardcover, right? So it's
Gotcha.
four
Yeah.
products from one. But how do I take that and scale it even farther, right? So you can do that one way um, with book summaries, right? So every now and then you'll see a book summary. So if you have a 30K word book, which is a pretty decent size for nonfiction, how do I take that? And because not everyone has the time to go through and read an entire book,
Hmm.
right? How do I take that and take out its core essence down to a book summary, right? So then you have a book summary for the ebook, a paperback, and an audiobook. So you created three additional products from technically nothing. And then how do I take that and then take care of a global audience? So I have how do I get this in Spanish, right? So how do I get this in
Gotcha.
German? How do I
Yeah.
get this in French? And there's platforms now that allow you to do that for like very, very affordably and not have to spend an entire, because translating is not cheap, but there are platforms now that allow you to do it that actually work in an effect that you can get people to translate it for you in exchange for some of the book royalties. So if you don't have that big chunk of money just like sitting around to pay someone to translate it, there are resources like one's called BabbleCube, like Babylon, BabbleCube,
Hmm.
and they will translate it and publish it for you. And they just want a cut of the royalties. And that allows them to also have some ownership in the game to make sure they actually translate a good product.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's always good when the incentives match up.
Yes. Yes.
So for the promotion process, would you say it's one of the more difficult things about this whole process or
So the initial promotion process starts with like the first initial 30 days where you're promoting it fairly heavily.
Hmm.
specifically on Amazon. So Amazon's algorithm will pick it up and go, oh, okay, people are really liking this new book. Let's help get this out. And they'll send it to a bunch of people and they help. So you're trying to trigger that algorithm. So that's fairly easy. It's not very hard to bring a lot of traffic to your book, thanks to book promotion websites that you go through, and you're literally just paying for to get and tap into their email list
Hmm.
to send your book out to them, to people who would be interested in what you have to offer. So that's not too hard, right? So anyone with an extra $50 or $100 of for marketing can do that in the first initial 30 days, and then hope to recoup that as your book is ranking up the ranks in your category. So now you're getting organic traffic. But then you have what happens after that, right? So after that initial 30 days, like, what are you doing to continuously promote that book?
Hmm.
And that's the hard part. The initial 30 days is not hard. It's after that. How do you keep that momentum going? And so that's kind of where this author platform comes in. And then like building an automated email list and things of that sort, where you're continuously driving traffic to your books and building that audience around books that are all related, right? So you have the next thing to offer to your audience that they want.
Gotcha. So you really have to like strategize.
Yeah. And at the beginning, I had no strategy. My strategy was to write more books and publish more often. So now we're honing in on a niche. Like, we want to own that niche. For us, it's the first niche we want to own is like public speaking, right? And then the second niche we want to own is more of a health, intermittent fasting, high fat diet, things of that sort. Like, we want to own that niche as well. And so we're kind of working on these two hand in hand, which are two interests that I have a lot of. And so I don't mind getting out a lot of content out of spending a lot of time writing different books on those topics.
Gotcha. I didn't know about the intermittent fasting one, but I recall a Facebook post you made. I can see it now, you know?
Yeah. It's fascinating. And we'll have to save that for another podcast or another phone call or something, because I could go down a deep rabbit hole.
Okay. I'm curious about the biggest challenges in the book, just a major challenge for any of the books.
Yeah. So like the first one, I had no idea what I was doing. So the challenge was just hitting that next step and getting it done. So the first book on public speaking kind of helped walk people through a way to get over their fear of public speaking, but it takes several weeks, right? So if you've had a fear for years, like, you can't just wipe away a fear out of thin air. It doesn't work that way. So it takes several weeks. And so you have to have someone committed enough to not only read the entire book, but then to implement the entire book over several weeks so they can finally really see the results of getting over their fear of public speaking. So that challenge, that issue of, people inherently forget to read the entire book, right? We're busy. Mm-hmm. And then even after I'm sure you've also been in the case where you read a really great book and you're like, man, this is awesome. I could see how I could implement this in my life. And then life happens and you don't actually do anything with what you just learned.
Oh, definitely.
I think we're all kind of guilty of that. So that's what kind of led to this second book on public speaking, is that when I had coaching clients come and find me after they read my book, they said, hey, I need coaching for public speaking. No one was ever very preemptive about getting over their fear of speaking in front of an audience. They didn't wait weeks out to get better, right? They waited a couple of days.
Yeah.
And so that's where I always found people. I always found them when they're like, hey, I have to speak tomorrow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, let's get on the phone. Let's do some coaching. And so that was kind of where the idea of this book came from. So the biggest challenge was writing a book that was short enough that people could read it very, very quickly and still get everything they needed to get over their fear, not like fully get over their fear, but feel confident giving their talk in as short a time as possible. In our case, it's less than 24 hours.
That definitely was a short read. Like, I managed to do it in around an hour or so.
Perfect. That's kind of what we're going for. You're going to have some faster readers, but really that hour mark, like, I really didn't want to go any longer than that. Because if it takes too long, right, you're not going to finish the book and you're not going to actually implement what you learned. So,
I think that's the hardest task in any sort of teaching. Because I'm also thinking about making some courses for like Premiere and just the tools that I use, like whiteboard stuff too.
That's right.
And it's I'm trying to structure the course in a different way that so many other people have made courses on. So many people have made courses on these things, but is there a way to incentivize the student to actually use what you're saying and to actually practice what you're teaching? And it's something that's I'm still thinking about.
Sure.
But I'm thinking of a more like project oriented way of teaching where like you assign them a task, like create a certain video, and then you teach them while they're creating that instead of like having the tutorial just be like, do this, then do that, then a tutorial about this, then a tutorial about that. It's all sort of split in a way where you're not actually doing anything. You're just watching the video. So yeah, that's something that's been on my mind recently.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to purging away. It's like, because there's a lot of things I imagine you'd want to teach, and there was a lot of things I wanted to teach people about public speaking, but I had to purge away everything that was technically, kind of like killing your darlings, right? All the stuff that's not essential, and get that away. And I wanted that 80% solution, right? So I imagine even with Whiteboard, that there's a certain number of tools and things you use 80% of the time, right? That are the main things, right? So teaching them that 80% of what you use the majority of the time is going to get them through that part faster. I'm sure there's a ton of cool stuff they could do and learn. And we can kind of start geeking out and nerding out about those things, but getting them that 80% solution versus the 100% solution is way more important. And I think if you stray away from the trying to get them everything up front with that project-oriented piece, like in Public Speaking Panic, the project is themselves, right? Their talk.
Yeah.
And allowing them just to take that first step and get a quick win in, right? That starts building that momentum. So I don't want them to finish the book. I don't want them to read the entire book and then start implementing. Like, I strategically have them like, stop what you're doing, put this book down, which is for a lot of books bad. Like, you don't want people to put the book down,
true.
but I want them to put the book down, and I want them to go do what that very next step. Don't learn anything else. Don't learn anything else. I want you to do this first step first and come back.
Yeah, that's the ideal course right there. That's the ideal way of teaching and learning, in my opinion. Just right after you learn it, you apply it. That's in my opinion, that's the only way to learn.
Right.
That's why in-person coaching is like really, really, really great.
It's awesome. But unfortunately in school, we're not taught that way. We sit in a lecture for an hour.
Exactly. That's, oh man, I can get into that, but
we'll save that for another one too.
All right. Last question. What are your future ambitions? For instance, like, what are your next projects about, and what are you looking forward to?
Sure. Okay. So that kind of like went into it a little bit with these intermittent fasting books, these high fat diets, things of that sort. So that's the next big project. That's like the next 10 books are based all solely on these things, and getting these out and then building out our system to where we take a book. And something I didn't mention about as far as scaling books is that when you have two books that are related, you can bundle them together. It's like a box set, right? So I take these two books and I put them together, and I created another product for nothing. And people they don't think about this as far as multiplying books and creating this synergy effect. And so when I have 10 books and all of those can be bundled together in twos, right? I've now created 5 additional products. And you have to think that these are 5 additional products that can be converted into their own ebook, their own paperback, their own hardcover, and their own audiobook.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then you start bringing in the summaries. So now you have bundle summaries. And then you start bringing in the translations. All right. So I can turn one book into 105 different products, all based around books, right? So if I have 2 books, I can make, I think it's 315 different products, right? So you don't only double it, but you add an additional group of books based on the bundle themselves. So how do I take 10 books, all right, and then turn those into 3,000 different books this year, 3,000 different products this year?
Yeah.
And then how do I take that process, boil it down to its essence, and then into a system And then how do I take that system and show other people how to do it? So
That's clever.
that's the big project this year. And we're just gunning for it. And it's scary. We're probably gonna have to do our first hire this year with like a virtual assistant and then move on from there. And that's also terrifying because I personally don't know anything about that as far as like letting them in on my accounts, and then how do you handle passwords? Like it's scary.
Security.
But it's our next step. And so that's the big project.
Dude, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Me too.
Yeah, but what you're saying, it makes so much sense to just take what you are passionate about and what you know a lot about right now. You spend a lot of work on creating a book, and then you don't just move on to the next one. You actually utilize that in full. Like you bring everything out. It's like you're maxing out the potential of what that book can be in terms of like all the products that you're creating. It's very smart. It's very clever. Like I feel like I have an issue where I do the opposite, where I'm just like, I do a project and I'm like, oh, let's just move on to the next one. And I don't like try to utilize, or I don't try to like max that to its potential. It's definitely eye-opening, man. I'm gonna like think about this a lot more.
I mean, think about it this way. So like you said, like most people write a book and then they, it ramps up at the beginning and then it dies because they stop promoting it. They move on to the next project. And so then you spend all this time again writing another book. And that takes a lot of time, and a lot of editing and all this other stuff. So squeezing everything out of the first one before having moved on to the second one, right? So you're taking full advantage of it. And same thing goes for like promoting stuff. So like when people promote a blog post, all right, so they just put up a blog on their post and they might share on their social media or something. There are so many different ways to take that one blog post and just crush it across the board, right? So I take this blog post and I put it on my blog. And then I open up Zoom, like a Zoom meeting, and then I go through and just talk high level, make a video of me talking high level into a camera. And then I take that video, and Zoom allows you to separate the MP3 and the MP4. So you take the MP4 and you upload that to YouTube. So now you're on video format. And then you take the MP3 and you put that on your podcast. All right. So you took a blog and you turned that into a video and a podcast. So now you can promote your blog, your podcast, your video, because your audience doesn't always just want to read a blog. Some of them want a video and some of them want a podcast. So you can literally extrapolate so much for everything. And then same thing goes for your videos. Of course, your videos are very visual. But I imagine there's a way to take that and transcribe it into a text format.
Yeah, an article or something.
I've
been thinking about that, actually. I've considered that a lot in the past year, and I might actually start doing that. Yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, you got the Dreamlit podcast, right? So you're already on the audio format anyway, and then just adding the text piece, and then you don't even have to create like go make a WordPress blog, which honestly is like the devil. Like I cannot stand WordPress. There's so many different plugins and it's complicated, and I'm an engineer.
I'm using WordPress.
Are you using WordPress?
I feel you, dude. I feel you.
I can't stand it.
It's a struggle.
I'd like medium.com. It is so stupid easy to put up a blog.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It's very clean. It's super very clean. Simple.
Very fresh. You can add graphics when you need them, and then it's done. You're done. You don't have to do anything else.
Dude, you're gonna see me on the Medium pretty soon.
I can't wait. I'm already there, dude. You need to jump on board. It's awesome.
All right, man. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I've had a blast. Thanks for inviting me on the show. So excited to even be here. I mean, I can geek about this stuff all day long. So really, if I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to somebody else about it. So this was awesome.
Yeah, I hope I'll see you again eventually as a guest for the podcast. Let me know when your next book is. I'll read it too.
For sure. So if you need help with like public speaking or something like that, it's called Public Speaking Panic: How to Get Over Your Fear, or how to go from stage fright to stage ready in less than 24 hours.